you're like me, you spend lots of time poring over maps, looking at weather data, all in an effort to help predict when and where my best times to hunt will be. It'd be nice if there was a reliable source with all this information in one place. Enter the Spartan Forge app. Unlike some other predictive apps on the market, Spartan Forge was created from military combat intelligence experience tailored for hunters, and stands at the nexus of machine learning and white-tailed deer hunting. No more man-made algorithms. This is a predictive model based on real GPS-collared deer data, historical and predictive weather, and the next level of mapping imagery, all at my fingertips. I've been using the iOS app this season, and it has replaced all my other mapping tools. Visit SpartanForge.ai and sign up today, or head to your iOS or Android app store. Use the promo code TRUTH to save some money and download it today. Mobile hunters, if you're interested in upping your mobile game, then head to tetherednation.com and check out their saddle gear. There are a few things you can actually buy that will help you become a better deer hunter or give you the freedom to hunt any tree or any situation. This is the reason why I started saddle hunting in the first place and why I use Tethered's gear. I can honestly say that Tethered's saddle gear has changed how I hunt for the better. Big tree, little tree, from the ground, it doesn't matter. I'm untethered by my gear to hunt the best setup for the situation, instead of hunting for a tree that my gear can use. My current core setup consists of the Phantom saddle, Tethered 1 sticks, and the Predator platform, along with an assortment of their accessories. So if you want to up your mobile game, head over to tetherednation.com. Welcome to the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Spartan Forge. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 314. Today I'm joined by my good buddy Nathan Killen, and we are talking about sometimes you get what you need and not always what you want. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. And if you were out tromping through the woods for the PA rifle season, hopefully you got your tag filled. Season has come to a close, and now we are staring squarely at late season. I think there's roughly 2 weeks, off. I'm always bad with like how many days there is. But essentially, late season here in PA, statewide, will come in right there after Christmas. I think it's like the 26th. I want to say 26th, I think, is the first day. I'll have to turn to my online, or the book, if you will, as we like to call it in PA. Turn to the book and see what the exact dates are. But hopefully some of you guys found success out there. I was actually out for the last day in the evening, hunting a little spot that's kind of overlooked in I usually don't spend a whole lot of time in this particular area, but as I was kind of making my way through, I was hunting with my bow, of course. And it's a little kind of out of the way spot that it's kind of thick, and it's one of those places where it seems like it would be a good place for deer to kind of go hold up and get lost during gun season. And truth be told, the other times I've been in there, I've never hung a camera in this area, just in general, because it's usually I basically kind of go to it during gun season, and that's about it. And I typically don't see a whole lot of sign in there. But yesterday, as I was kind of walking in, there were a bunch of rubs in there. And now I feel like I'm going to need to hang some cameras in this general area just to see what's going on, because it might be a little overlooked gem, even for that October, maybe even September timeframe. It actually is one of the closest areas that I hunt that would be the closest to food. Now, it's not adjacent to, but it would be relatively close to some. Not huge agriculture, but a little bit of agriculture. So I might be able to make a play on that. So that's in my mental Rolodex for next off season, or this off season already, just to kind of check that out. And it also looks like a place that you might find some sheds. So I think I'm going to spend a little bit more time in there with the pup and put him on the case and see if he can't come up with a shed or two. But with that, we're fast approaching Christmas. Hopefully everyone got the Christmas shopping done. If you haven't finished up your shopping, if there's hunters that you need to buy for, make sure you support the guys and gals that support this podcast. So the folks from Tethered, the folks from Spartan Forge, the folks from Exodus. And don't forget, if you're local, head over to Bob and AJ shop. That's my local archery shop. It's where I go, get tuned, get my bow tuned, get dialed up. It's usually where, I always get my bows from those guys. So be sure you pay those guys a visit if you're in the general area, and tell them I sent you over to bother them, if you will. Also, If you haven't checked out the new Spartan Forge stuff that's been coming out, they've been slaying it lately with a bunch of new updates to the app. The newest thing was the slope angle feature, which is awesome. They have their 3D modeling that occurs now as well on desktop and on the phone app. And I've already kind of used it and put it on the case of finding some easier access into places, and for some of the northern piece that I hunt that's super steep. I started using the slope, if for nothing else, just to find a little bit easier kind of pathways into some of the places that I want to scout and hunt, as opposed to just kind of going straight up kind of vertical faces and stuff like that. And it also I started using it too, just to kind of dial into like low-lying spots that would make travel easier for deer that I might have overlooked. And there's some areas that I had scouted that the slope angle feature kind of made pop out to me of places that I've actually missed while scouting, that like, hey, this is probably where they're going to travel most often, because it's just a little bit easier of a path of resistance. And I've just kind of never stumbled onto it while I was scouting. So I've kind of earmarked those places to go back. I'm actually going to hunt a lot up there in late season. And so this is coming real handy and timely for me to, one, map out a little bit easier access, and two, have some places that I haven't been to yet that I think might be some decent spots to either throw hunts at, or at least check to see if deer are spending time in those areas that might be worthy of a camera for this off season, or maybe a hunt for the fall, or whatever, just depending on how that kind of lays out, what time of year it might be best to kind of hunt. So, but with that, so be sure to check out Spartan Forge app, so spartanforge.ai, and then, whatever phone you might be using, whatever app store you use for your apps. But today we're going to just kind of get jumped into today's episode. I got a cool guest on for you guys today. He's a second-time offender. You guys know him. You love him, Nathan Killen. Super good dude. He's actually one of my favorite people in the hunting space to kind of talk to, not just because the dude is a killer and he does it with traditional equipment. That's all kind of known. But I think one of the things I most appreciate about him is just kind of his attitude toward hunting, and his appreciation for adventure, and his just appreciation for the experiences of hunting, tag filled or no tag filled. It seems like regardless of that, now he wants to fill tags, of course, but it seems regardless of whether he's filling a tag or whether the tag is being filled on a caliber of deer that he was intending it for, regardless of those things, he always has an appreciation for the experience, and it seems like his season is always going well. No matter when I talk to him, what his status is as tag filled, unfilled, whatever the case is, he always just seems to be having a good season because he has the right perspective. And he made a timely post this fall. It was really what kind of spawned this episode, because it happened right as I was getting ready to leave for Kansas. And he made a post that it was just kind of one of those things where sometimes, you get a right piece of information at the right time to kind of recalibrate or reset like your mental focus or like how you're thinking about things. And that was one of those things for me that I saw it and I was like, man, I'm focusing on all the wrong stuff. And it really kind of changed my perspective on the rest of my season, to be quite honest. And that's a lot of what we talk about today, is that, and that's why we kind of in the intro kind of mentioned, you sometimes you get what you need and not always what you want. I think the Rolling Stones had a song about that, which was a great song. And I think Nathan kind of used that kind of same idea for his season this year and framed his season in a positive way. And he had a great season regardless, however you want to frame it. So with that, we're going to go ahead and just jump into today's show and have a chat with my good buddy, Nathan Killen. I hope that you guys enjoy the conversation as much as I did. And as always, thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today I got my buddy on. He's a 2-time offender. There's no jail time associated with that, buddy. So you were in the clear for that. But I got my friend on, Mr. Nathan Killen. What's going on, buddy?
Oh, just enjoying the evening. Just got off of work and had a little bit of supper and ready to talk some deer hunting. So
that's right, man. I had me some supper too. Actually, I had some venison chili from the doe that I killed on Thanksgiving morning.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it could have been a little fresher, but you had Thanksgiving dinner that day. It wasn't backstraps for Thanksgiving. We did the normal Thanksgiving thing. So.
Oh yeah, ham and turkey.
That's right. But we got it in a couple of days later, so it was good, and I had a lot to be thankful for that day. Not just the normal stuff, but man, it was things work in mysterious ways. I was having a rough season. That doe presented an opportunity, and I was like, you know what? Not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. I'm going to go ahead and take advantage of it.
I tell you, I think that most of us have been experiencing a tough season this year. Everybody I talk to, no matter where they've hunted, it's been pretty tough for them. So I
Yeah.
think you're not alone with that.
Yeah, I've kind of heard that too, not just from, our buddies that are in Ohio. I'm sure you've heard this as well, but have had some struggles with some EHD. I had Jake Bush on, he talked about that, that he's obviously a guy who usually has a handful of deer, and it's, October 5th, you're like, all right, about time for Jake Bush to make a post of a big deer he's killed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
But he's had a tough go of it. And it was kind of cool talking to him because, one thing we kind of talked about was just less about the doldrums of how tough the season was, but the silver lining that it's kind of provided him, as far as, you know, really kind of doing a lot more scouting than he scouts a lot just in general, but, doing even more than he typically would. And it's going to pay dividends in the long run. And so, he's trying to find a positive out of a bad situation. And I think being able to have that mindset a lot of times when you're going through the grind of a season is, man, it's almost as valuable as the tag in your pocket in a lot of ways. What do you think?
oh yeah, for sure. And one thing that we need to look at is just the adventure aspect of it. To most of the time we base our seasons off of field tags as far as how successful they were. But really and truly, especially being bow hunters and stuff like that, we need to look at the adventure aspect of it as much as a field tag, if not more. Because really and truly, just being out there and enjoying God's creation and just living in a free country to where we can do stuff like that. How important that is.
Yeah.
So it's more than just field tags.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to always, when things are going bad, I try to always remind myself that there's a lot of people out there that wish they had my problems,
That's exactly right.
you know? Um, and I try to have that perspective, and I try to just take a moment when I'm in a tree or, Kansas, or if I'm in Idaho or whatever, wherever I'm hunting, especially those mornings where you watch the sunrise and you're just like, man, I can't imagine, like, you couldn't find a painting or a picture to be
That's
more
right.
majestic. You know what I mean? And I'm like, and I'm watching it. I'm actually here living it, and it just kind of has a way of kind of, providing some perspective. And I'm not I'm a morning guy. Like, I like to get up in the morning and work out, but like morning hunts, and I love morning hunts, are like my favorite. But man, sometimes the struggle bus is real when that alarm goes off.
I
you
agree.
know, but I always say, it's like especially on days off, like Thanksgiving morning, I got up, and that's a nice day to like sleep in and just be lazy. Like the house already smells like food because this turkey started roasting like the night before or whatever, and all the prep. It's just a nice morning to kind of sleep in. And my alarm went off, Thanksgiving morning, and I was like, for a second, I was like, oh man, do I want to do this? Because I also had like a kayak trip in, and in the cold and stuff like that morning. And once I got in the tree, it was one of those things where I was like, man, I hate waking up on my day early on my days off, but man, I never, never once have I regretted it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like you said, early morning hunts, getting up early and stuff is hard, but really the hard part is just getting making that first step.
That's
Once
right.
you get out, get a shower, get freshened up, and actually hit the road or whatever, heading to where you're going. You get woke up and you're ready to face it. So
Yeah, that's right. It's it doesn't hurt when you get like a boot full of water first thing whenever you're putting your kayak in.
oh
That
man,
that'll wake you up in like
I've
25
done
degree
that.
weather.
Yes, I've done that. Not stepping into a kayak, but going across the creek. Yeah,
That's
that's not
right.
fun.
Yeah, after I killed that doe, I was just trying to get out of there because it was Thanksgiving, so I'm trying to get home because I'm like, all right, I gotta peel this thing and try to have supper with the family for Thanksgiving and stuff. So I'm looking at my watch and I'm like, all right, I gotta get going. And I got her all like strung up in the kayak and stuff, and and like wherever she was at, it was actually perfect because she actually, you know, she died. Where I ended up field dressing her was like close to the water, to where I was actually able to just
Oh,
drop
nice.
all. Yeah, I was able to just drop all my stuff, walk to get my kayak, and bring my kayak down, just throw her on. So there was no dragging involved for that.
Yeah.
And And I was trying to get out of there quick, and I stepped in, because I always wear waders in, because sometimes, depending on how low water might be in the swampy area or whatever, I might have to pull the kayak a distance or whatever. And I was just trying to get out of there, and I stepped in up over my boots and filled both boots up on my way out. But it was one of those things I just kind of smiled and laughed, because I was like, hey, you know what? I'm headed home. I got a deer in the kayak. It's Thanksgiving. I was like, I'll take wet feet, man. I don't care.
That's exactly right. Yeah, man.
That's right. It's like I'll pay that small price.
Yes, sir.
Man, how much hunting do you have left this season? I know you filled 2 tags, right?
Yes.
So-
Yeah, I filled one tag in Ohio and one in here in my home state, which I've got one more buck tag
Okay.
that I can use west of the Blue Ridge here in Virginia.
Okay.
And our season goes out the first Saturday in January normally. So,
Okay.
and actually, my favorite part of the season is actually coming up.
Really?
Yes, November, surprisingly, is tough in the mountains because we just don't see the rut like some of these Midwestern places see. I'm on Instagram a lot, seeing other people's posts and stuff, and they're talking about seeing all these bucks running does and chasing does and bucks cruising and stuff like that. And in our mountains, it can be a ghost town during the rut.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason behind that is because our buck to doe ratio is just so far out of whack that bucks have to do nothing to get with the doe, and so the majority of November, which is traditionally, the really good rut hunting, is very, very slow for us. And then once the bucks start running out of does, then they start getting a lot more visible, especially the bigger ones from about Thanksgiving on through the first week of December. So
That's interesting. Like, are they still kind of looking around for does, or are they more settling into more of their late season kind of habits?
no, not yet. They're still looking for does at that point. Scrapes actually, like right now, they'll start ramping back up. Actually more so than they have been in the past 2 or 3 weeks, and so.
Wow. Is that relative to maybe like that second peak breeding date that hits sometime, like, depending on where you're at? I know for me, I think that second peak breeding date, I want to say, is like December 13th or 14th, roughly, which would be.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it does, but seems like it's a little bit. You see bucks out cruising and roaming around a whole lot more. Actually, right before that point. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So what's your? I know the last time you and I talked, we kind of talked more probably around rut, more of that October timeframe. So what's your what's your approach to this time of year? And I ask kind of selfishly because I've been hunting, and I've talked to you about this a little bit in the past in text messages and stuff like that, with that north piece, big woods piece that I've been kind of trying to figure out. And I hunted it a couple times this year, saw a couple deer, saw a buck. And I still have a PA tag because I had one really good encounter in PA on like the 18th of October, and really haven't seen anything, afield or on camera beyond that. And I don't want to waste sits, hoping. So I know I have good bucks up in that north piece. And so I'm just going to kind of go up there and spend my December and January, or half of January, because I think our season's up until the middle of January up there. And I'm just going to basically spend most of my hunting time, bow hunting up there in the late season. And, it's not, I don't want to say it's low deer density, but it's just very pocketed, like where they just kind of live in certain areas. So I'm kind of selfishly asking, like, how do you approach this time of year any differently than you would, say, October or, November for you?
Well, not really much different than November because I'm still going to be concentrating on the major terrain features, that's going to funnel any cruising buck, and I would want those type of terrain features to have, some scrapes and stuff like that, normal rutting type sign that you would see, and but I would focus on those, and like you said, our deer are in pockets too here, so like right now, the leaves have all fell about a month ago, so by this point, heavy feeding sign is going to be accumulating a lot. So, hunting the fringes of those type of areas would be really good, especially if those type of areas are within a known buck's home range.
Hmm.
So if you haven't seen him, during the season, then that's a great time to actually catch him in daylight hours. During that time, coming through those type of spots, and you never know. A lot of big bucks from other areas, they roam greater distances during this time period. So you'll have bucks that you never even knew existed show up during this time of year. So.
Right. Now, do you find whenever you maybe have a wayward buck that's just kind of showing up, do you find typically he's going to use the same areas that you maybe have seen other kind of deer that you've targeted use? So, like for
Oh
example,
yeah,
yeah,
they know where to go. The people underestimate the knowledge that a big buck has of all the areas around. I mean, especially if he's 5, 6, 7, 8 year old. He's been there and lived there long enough, even if it's not within his core area, that he already knows where to go to.
right,
And it's funny how and how they use like their smell, sense of smell. That I think bucks use that more than we even realize that they do, especially for locating does and stuff.
right, yeah.
So,
I mean, I witnessed that this year in that encounter that I had because I was set up on a primary scrape, and this I had a picture of this deer. In hindsight, I knew I had a picture of him because he came in and he bedded 40 yards from me, and I didn't realize either. I saw one shooter come in the morning around 8:30. This is October 18th, and he came in and I saw him and I was like, oh, that's a good buck shooter, and I couldn't tell if I had a picture of that deer or not, but I could see enough of his frame and stuff. I was like, if I get a shot, I'm gonna shoot him, and he was 40 yards away in this little bit of brush, and he was just kind of hanging out in there. And then all of a sudden, he just like took off,
yeah.
like didn't run, but like he wasn't wasting any time leaving, you know. And then I was kind of scanning and watching because I thought that was kind of odd and didn't see anything, and ended up kind of looking back over to my right and just kind of doing your normal scanning. Well, I don't know how much time goes by, but I'm looking and I'm like, man, that looks like an antler over there. Like, and there's just like anyone who hunts thick areas knows has experienced this. There's like one hole that's like 2 foot, maybe 3 foot wide through the brush that you can actually see the ground. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like 40 yards away. And there's a down log that's right there. And like through that little hole, I could see what I thought looked like an antler. And I'm like, and Nathan, I'm like the worst shed hunter on the planet. So I can't pick out antlers to save my life. So I was convinced it wasn't an antler. You know what I mean? I'm like, that's not an antler. And then I was like, well, I should probably throw the glass on it just to make sure. So I throw the glass on it, and I'm like, man, that does look like an antler. I was like, man, that's pretty realistic looking. And then all of a sudden it moved. I was like, oh man. And then I saw his frame, and that buck bedded there for 2 hours, 40 yards away. I just watched him. And the way the
Yeah.
wind was working, and it was cool to watch it because, I like just being around deer when they don't know that I'm there for obvious reasons when you're hunting, but more so because I like to just watch and see how they react to things. And
Yes.
and just observe a mature deer because I knew after I got a good look at his rack through the binos, I knew what deer it was because I had one picture of him only, and it was like late September. That was it. The only time I ever got a picture of him. But he had a very specific antler characteristic that told me it was him, and I just watched him. And so when I knew which deer it was, I knew he was like a 4.5-year-old deer. You know what I mean? For this area, that's about as mature as you might get for the suburban area that I hunt around my home.
Yeah.
And so then I started thinking about like, well, why is he bedding there? Well, then I knew why that other buck left because he came in. He's the bully,
Yeah.
and I'm like, why is he just bedding there? And then I'm like dropping milkweed and I'm watching the wind, and I knew what wind I had, and that's why I set up where I set up. But I was like, man, I was like, get out of here. I was like, he's laying right where he can smell that scrape. I was like, and he will know if a doe comes from the other direction to hit that scrape or walk through.
Yeah.
I was like, he's basically able to scent check. However, I don't even know how far a deer can smell, but whatever that distance is, he can smell all of that to the northeast.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that I feel like that they can scent check an area, it's going to change as far as the area, the conditions, and what have you. But that I think that they could scent check an area and know whether they was a doe within a few hundred yards, and maybe as far out as a quarter of a mile or so.
Mm-hmm.
And see, that is one thing that makes it so hard to set up and actually see these mature bucks, because when we set up to hunt deer.
Mm-hmm.
When they're scent checking areas looking for does, the most efficient way for them to do it is to scent check a whole area from certain spots.
Mm-hmm.
And our job is to try to locate those type of spots.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but generally those type of spots are one, hard to identify. Sometimes you just got to see the buck doing it, and two, there's not going to be that much deer sign in those type of spots generally.
There isn't. There's literally that
Yeah,
one community scrape, and it's adjacent to doe bedding, which is why I like it, right?
yeah,
But like your words were ringing true in my ears because I've been since you and I've kind of become friends and we've talked and texted and I've had you on the podcast in the past. Like there's one thing that stood out to me that you do, and Ryan Glitsky does this too. He's a good, but I know he's a mutual friend of ours.
oh yeah,
Um, and it's I know that you hunt off a sign a lot, like where you don't set up on it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I understood it in principle. You know what I mean? But it's hard, like you said, it's hard for people to walk away from that big sign when you see it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
You want to set up there because you're like, he or she or whatever it is has been here, right? But watching that deer do that conversation that you and I have had just came like rushing back to me because I was
yeah,
like, bingo, there it is. I was like, if I was set up 40 yards away in that little bit of brush cover there, that's actually where he wants to be because he's safe. That's the spot within the spot. And the second thing that it told me was trail cameras are a powerful tool, but that deer coming there and bedding there told me he's been in there a whole lot more than the
yes,
trail camera has told me, because he's not that comfortable just to come lay down in the middle of the day and just spend a couple hours there if it's not a spot that he's frequenting.
yeah,
And so that was the other thing that it told me, is that, like, man, if you only get one picture of a deer in an area, right, and it's got the right stuff, he's there a whole lot more than that trail camera has told you.
yes. Yeah, and just we I know you do this same thing, and I know Chad does this same thing. 90% of us do this same thing, but we use trail cameras over scrapes to try to get inventory of what bucks is around.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can tell you that you're only getting a portion of the bucks that's in there, because a lot of these older mature bucks, they won't come to those scrapes all
Mm-hmm.
the time, and that they're circling downwind of those type of places. I've seen it, with my own eyes. I've seen bucks, that I know that live there. I've had my cameras on these big scrapes that in my mind, that any buck in the area is going to come through and visit that scrape, and I'm going to get his picture. Well, I've witnessed with my own eyes bucks coming through that I never had a picture of on that scrape,
Mm-hmm.
but yet they're circling around below that scrape, and those are the type of bucks that I talk about, that has the hermit type personality. They're not a very social deer,
Mm-hmm.
but yet they're still able to socialize with other deer, just not. Um, they don't have to be as personable about it, if that makes sense. They can do it from a distance.
Right, right. Man, you're getting me fired up for this North piece, man. Because I'm going to send you some pictures of this deer when we're done here, because he is a bully and a loner. I've not very often seen him with other deer, even in the summer.
Yeah,
And I've had 2 years of trail camera pictures of him, and finally got a spot where I started getting him a little bit in daylight. And he's like the buck I want to try to hunt in this big woods piece, because I feel like I've started getting a few of his tells. And now I just got to put boots to the ground and just try to find where he's spending time here as the rut, at least for my area, has wound down.
yeah.
But so I'm not sure what the temperature gets to around this time of year for you where you're hunting. Like, what's the average temperature range for you?
when it has been warmer this year, and I think everybody's experienced that everywhere.
Yeah.
But normal overnight lows, is going to be in the 20s, and then daytime highs, 40s to 50s.
Right. Okay.
So, and during cold spells, it'll drop down into the teens at night, and
Hmm.
we have good cold fronts come through. Sometimes it won't get above freezing. So,
Right.
during
So when you get a little bit past like that, this kind of time frame, let's say like more late season, if you will,
hmm
like do you start to flip and like focus more on south facing slopes more so than anything else to try to play that like the harsh weather conditions, or do you kind of stay more true to like just your approach in general that you have just normally?
just normally, because you know, obviously, food is going to be, once we get past the, middle of the month,
Hmm.
December, then these heavy feeding spots is where, I'm going to spend some time. But now, I'll tell you, hunting the heavy feeding sun spots is not always the best place to hunt for a big deer. And the reason I say that is because my shed hunting,
Mm.
shed season is getting ready to come in. And I can tell you from experience hunting places. Now, I'm talking about years that we have good acorn crops, okay?
Hmm.
Because now there is a difference between years that we have good acorn crops and when we don't have a good acorn crop. Years that we have good acorn crops, the places that you see really tilled up is 99% of the time these doe groups coming in, and it's three, four, five, six, eight, nine, 10, however many deer is tearing these places up. I never hardly ever find sheds in those type of places. The
Mm.
places that I find sheds in are in these little hollows down off, backed off away from those places, closer to cover. You'll see where it looks like one or two deer have been, feeding around. That's where you generally find your bigger antlers.
Hmm.
So that tells me that if you hunt the heavy feeding sign, then you're not in the right type of spots most of the time.
Hmm.
Now, on years that we don't have a heavy crop of acorns, the deer are if there's grassy type fields close by, then all the deer are going to be forced to use those type of areas, and that is where you want to do your shed hunting and late season hunting. But
Right.
generally, you're not going to see a buck in open type country like that. So
Right.
not daylight hours.
That's interesting because this year for me around here has been that was one of my biggest challenges this year was, I've spent, however many past several years, to all the places that were new to me, whenever I was doing all my scouting postseasons, in season, whatever it was, I was marking, all the feed trees essentially.
Yeah,
That way I would know, that I go back through in September and check them, and see, or even during the summer I'm hanging trail cameras, just using binos to see what's holding any, holding any acorns or whatever. And this year I checked every single spot that I had marked, and there wasn't a single tree dropping.
yeah,
And it
mm,
just, and that was the other thing that kind of threw me for a loop because it actually, I don't want to say it messed up, but it changed the behavior around these community scrapes that I had found. And what I had realized was that some of these community scrapes, because I've prioritized ones that are more so related to being adjacent to doe bedding, well, that doe bedding had shifted because the reason that doe bedding was used so heavily was because it was so close to those feed trees,
yeah,
and so it kind of threw everything out of whack. So as long as I have acorns, or I have some mass dropping, like then those are always going to be good and in play. But like my inventory in and around those community scrapes was way down this year based on
yeah,
that.
yeah. Up in southern Ohio, and you know where I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
Uh, I was up there this past winter, shed hunting and scouting, and I found the most impressive scrape that I've ever seen.
Really.
I mean, you could park a car in this scrape. It was under a beech tree, and that they had the area dished out. They was like two scrapes right there that actually turned into one, but you could distinctly see the two scrapes, and both of those scrapes were where they had been used so much by so many bucks. They were kind of dished out like a car hood,
Wow.
in two places, and the overhead limbs of that beech tree was just wore out,
Hmm.
and I was so excited to put a camera on that. So before spring green up, I had a camera over that. And do you know, up to this point, I have had like 3 or 4 bucks since then visit that scrape, and it's not been kicked out at all.
Wow. And was that scrape, do you think, all kind of based off of the food that was surrounding it?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's crazy, man, how some of those, small things will just make all the difference.
yes,
It's because that was the kick in the pants that I got this year. And it was just, so I was kind of basically starting from zero, because I was like, well, I can't spend any time at these spots because I don't think they're worth anything. So now I got to just put boots in the ground. And that's basically what I did. I just walked and found some other spots, that will, might help me, in the years going forward.
yeah,
But it certainly made for a hard season. But
yeah.
man, I wanna switch gears here, and I wanna, what the main reason I wanted to chat with you today, was you made a post right after you killed that buck in Ohio, and I want to talk about that hunt. That when I saw it, I want to say, if I'm remembering the date correctly, I want to say it was like October 30th. I think is when you made the post. I don't remember exactly when you killed the deer. Did you kill the deer on the 30th, or was it prior to that?
It was the 29th or 30th,
Was it?
somewhere
Okay.
right there. Yeah,
Yeah, so I saw that post, and it was selfishly, it was one of those things that was, the it was the words I needed to see at the exact words I needed to see at the exact right time. Because I was getting my pants kicked off me essentially, for
yeah,
the season, and that's one of the reasons why I love following you throughout the season, because it's good to have, I think, buddies in your corner who can help you gain perspective, and I always get that from you, and I know that you always kind of have the right approach, the right attitude, the right mental kind of makeup. And I think having people like that to watch and learn from, at least for me, is refreshing. So I'm always curious, man, your ability to be in the moment with humility is something that, I hope that one day I can better, do a better job of, and emulate. And I know you're a man of faith, and I'm just curious if, like, is this something, that ability to kind of be in the moment and be humble, does this just kind of come to you, or is this something that, as you've gotten older, it's become more of a, like a more of a salient point of your hunts? I'm just curious, like, how how you're able to manifest that essentially.
well, yeah, I don't know. I've kind of been, I guess like that all my life. I'm a very humble person, and I don't purposely be humble. I think everybody should purposely try to be humble. It's just my nature.
Hmm.
I can't help but be that way, and it, I'm just the type of person that I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I try to I try to look at things from other people's perspective before I jump to conclusions or judge things.
Hmm.
So I guess that helps me out there. But you know, we'll talk about that specific post, and we're going to rewind to the 1st of October.
Hmm.
You know, I went to North Dakota and hunted for a week up there. Me and my girls went up there. It was an absolutely fantastic trip. I mean, we were very close to the Canadian border. We drove up the Canadian border, looked across, and we didn't actually go into Canada, but it's exciting to be able to look across
Yeah.
the border there and see Canada, which it looks just the same, on that
Right.
on our side. But I've got a buddy that recommended me to hunt there. We was talking one day. He said, what's your favorite hunt or something like that? And I said, I would love to go on a Canadian whitetail hunt. I said, just that the setting there would have to be, just awesome. And
Yeah.
plus those just giant uh, Canadian whitetails. And he said, well, you need to go to North Dakota. So I made that trip. It was worth it, but I seen less than 10 or 11 deer the whole trip I was there. And I seen one little old bitty buck, you know. So, that kind of, um, I don't know, kind of put a damper on me because, I was hoping to go up there and at least see, something.
Yeah.
Uh, but The temperatures were, 30 degrees hotter, and for northern whitetails, that's a, that can put a damper on any whitetail, movement, no matter where you hunt. If the temperatures that much hotter than what they normally would be, but it was still a great hunt. I went up there. I have, I've never hunted elk, but while I was there, I got to hear bull elk bugle 2 different mornings.
Oh, that's cool.
I got to, I seen more elk sign than I did actually deer sign, and I seen some moose tracks and stuff like that. But anyway, it was just really, really slow hunting, but it was still a great trip. So come on back to Virginia, and uh, and I'm hunting an absolute giant here in Virginia, and I'm hoping he's still alive. But while I was in North Dakota, he daylighted, and then this was our first week of bow season. He daylighted 3 times, and he was within 15 yards of my stand.
Oh man.
And I'm in North Dakota, not seeing very much. But anyway, fast forward on to um, our Ohio trip. Went up there, and we're hunting public ground up there, and the temperatures, it was really hot, hunting in short sleeves, and it was very, very dry. The deer just wasn't moving, and just wasn't leaving any sign. So, we all go to these places with hopes of seeing or killing, a giant that we don't have in our home state or what have you.
Right.
So, we just get up there and just not seeing the sign and stuff. So, I realized that hunting is going to be tough anyway. So, the following week was still showing, hot temperatures. And normally, when you go on an out of state hunt, if you're there during November, at least some point in a 5 to 7, 8 day trip, you're going to have a few days that's, going to have more seasonable temperatures. But
Right.
they wasn't forecasting that. So, anyway, the second evening, I've scouted. I had already been into this spot. It's actually where I killed that buck last year,
Okay.
and I went back into that spot. That was actually the first area that I went into, and I had put a trail camera out, and the batteries had went dead, and I just didn't have the pictures on it that I was hoping to. But I wasn't seeing the sign, so I went to a completely different area, checked it out, and then went to another area and checked it out. Let's see. By this time, it was like the second or third day,
Mhm.
and but anyway, I went back into the first area, and I noticed there was some fresh grapes being laid down. So I went up into this thermal hub that I had found back in when I shed hunting, and I set up, and within an hour or so into the hunt, I looked up on the side of the hill, up on one of those bedding points, and there was a buck standing there.
Hmm.
And I put my binoculars on him, and I thought, he's not really the kind of buck that I'm looking for. I believe I'll just, give him a pass. And the longer I sat there and looked at him and thought about the situation, I thought, if he comes down here, I will probably end up shooting him.
Hmm.
And so he did. He came right down there and gave me a perfect shot. And, I shot him, and he didn't go 70 yards and piled up. And, I went up there and North Dakota with the hopes of killing a giant, and it just don't always work out that way, and trophy hunting in general, it can take a lot of fun out of you hunting,
Yeah.
and I think that a lot of other guys can attest to that, so we just really need to keep these things in perspective. Not only is trophy hunting, it can take the fun out of it, but a trophy, is different from, region to region.
Yeah.
And also the time you have available. You
Hmm.
know, social media is full of these guys killing these giants and stuff like that, but we don't always know their situation. And so, and also, coming from my perspective, and I know a lot of other guys like Jake Bush and Andy May, a lot of these other guys, we, and it's perceived, but we have a lot of pressure on us because we've got some kind of credibility or notoriety to always produce.
Right.
And so I don't know. I'm hoping all
Yeah.
this is,
No,
you know,
it makes sense. It's like you still have to get to a point. I think what I appreciated about your hunt and just I forget exactly how you said it, but you, the way I kind of remembered it, and I'll paraphrase, was just kind of like you don't always get what you want, but you get what you need.
that's
Like,
right.
you know what I mean? Like
Yep,
to quote
and
the
I'm
rolling
getting,
to quote the Rolling Stones. You know
yep,
what I mean?
yep,
Like, um,
and
go ahead.
but I'm building up to that. Um, but some of us have certain reputations, and all that builds up, and like I said, it's perceived pressure because trust me, the guys on social media and stuff that kind of look up to those type of people, they really don't care,
Right.
what you kill. That they're more interested in learning from you.
Yeah.
But still, there's that pressure there that you put on yourself, you know. But anyway, and then another side of it, which is actually the behind this post, everybody knows that I'm a Christian,
Hmm.
and you know, if you're a Christian, God looks at you the same way that we look at our own children
Hmm.
because we are His children,
Hmm.
and um, our children may have certain desires for certain things, but we truly know what they need more than they know what they need
Hmm.
because of the maturity and stuff. But you know, uh, I may have wanted the Boone and Crockett buck, but that buck made me happy.
Hmm.
It had been a tough season up to that point, and I just needed to humble myself and realize that that was a nice deer.
Yeah.
you know, uh, he may have just been a 3.5-year-old buck that 115 or 20-inch deer, but you know what? We're out there to have fun and enjoy it, and eh, if you trophy hunt, you can go depending on where you live at and stuff like that. You can go seasons
Hmm.
without, several seasons without ever harvesting an animal.
Yeah.
And not that harvesting that animal is that important, but that's still that's why we're there.
Right.
So it still feels good to be able to accomplish something other like that.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's funny, that you know I think you're right where it's like folks that are looking to to guys like you or Andy or whomever, at least my opinion, it's like I wouldn't care what you killed, as long as it made you happy. I just enjoy, I'm fortunate. I have a podcast. So I get to know a lot of guys. I'm just fortunate and grateful that I can actually talk to you outside of like the podcast and just have conversations and texts and talk deer hunting and stuff like that. Would care less if you killed a 80-inch deer, you know what I mean, or
Right.
180
Yeah.
inch deer, you know what I mean? Because you're a good dude and you're willing to share information with me, and you're always gracious in doing that. And so I just want more people like that, and I want those folks like you and the Andys and guys like that to just always hunt for themselves. You know what
Yes.
I mean? Because it's really easy, I think to get to get lost in that. And there's I mean it blows my mind sometimes. It's like I hear of people losing friendships over deer.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's like I can't think of something more ridiculous. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Than being that mad over something you don't own. That's you know what I mean? Like
That's exactly right. The friendships anymore. Now, I haven't always been this way, and I will admit that. I have always put, as far as time, now I have never put a deer between me and somebody, but
mhm.
I have put my time between me and somebody.
Oh,
In
for
other
sure.
words,
Yeah.
I've been guilty of that, but anymore, it's more important to me the friendships that I've gained through this sport more so than the deer. Because trust me, you'll remember those friends and have more good times with them than the memories of these bucks that I have on the wall.
Yeah.
I enjoy them on the wall, but I enjoy the relationships more
Yeah.
anymore. You know.
Yeah. And Chad and I've always said, like, when he and I have talked about it, it's, he's one of my best friends. And, we always kind of joke about this when we go out on hunting trips together. It's like, because we'll talk like, hey, you're going to kill a giant on this trip. We're kind of pumping each other up, getting ready for the trip. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yes.
and then, but at the end of the day, it's like we always talk about it. It's, if I kill a giant or you kill a giant or whatever I kill and whatever you kill, you and maybe three other people actually care. You know what I mean? At the end of the day,
That's
you and maybe
exactly
three
right.
other people are actually even going to remember what I killed. You know what I mean? So why would I ever invest my time, and my energy in worrying about what people might think when they're not going to think anything for the most part?
Exactly right. Yep.
And if I killed a spike and I called Chad and was like, well, I shot that doe on Thursday. Text Chad a picture, and he was just all kinds of pumped. He was
Heck
like,
yeah.
you know what I mean? He's like, heck yeah, dude. He was like, well, because it was actually the first one with the kayak too. Because I've been trying to get blood on that kayak for like 2 years and it just hadn't worked out. And it finally happened, and it's like, and he was like, heck yeah. He's like, kayak trip, it's awesome. And my other buddy was like, dude, it's so sweet. You're getting a kayak and deer out. You know what I mean? It was just, they were all jacked up because of what you said earlier, the experience, the adventure, and doing water access just adds like an element of adventure for me. You know what I mean? It's just, it's outside the norm. And so,
and it was a goal for you.
Yeah. I wanted to put blood on that kayak. I didn't really care how it happened, but I wanted to put blood on that kayak because I just wanted that experience.
I think that goals are something that every hunter should have, but I don't think that you should let those goals ruin your season or your hunt if you didn't accomplish them.
Right.
And
go ahead.
I was just going to say, that keeping your sanity and having fun is way more important.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I couldn't agree more, man. And I think, as hunters, we sometimes forget that. I've tried to do a better job of keeping that, that perspective. I feel like I do a little bit better of a job of it now. And I don't know if maybe it's because I'm a little older. I did start doing jujitsu. And that is,
I saw that.
Yeah, that is a humbling sport.
Yeah.
And if you have any interest in doing it long term, and you're new, your ability to have some humility is going to be the only way you survive the beginning of it, because you are basically everybody's punching bag for years, until you gain the requisite skills to compete, effectively. And if you're at a good place, the guy in which I am, the guys all treat you well and they teach you as they're beating you, you know what I mean? Because they want you to be better because you make it harder for them. So that makes them better, and so everyone's there to kind of do the same thing. Doesn't mean you don't get beat. Like I went to open mat tonight before you and I recorded because I'm traveling for work the rest of this week or part of this week. And so I was going to miss a couple sessions. So I went to open mat tonight, and I hate even saying winning or losing because everyone's just there to learn. But out of all the guys I rolled with, I think I rolled probably 6 or 7 rounds. There was only one guy that I rolled with that I actually was able to submit and control for the match, for the round.
Yeah.
Every other guy submit me or just controlled me in a way that was like no doubt. You know what I mean? Like, and some of them were like well beyond me, like purple belts and stuff like that are like well beyond my skill set, and they were playing with me and allowing me to play and have fun and try things, and then be able to kind of work themselves out of it because that was their challenge. You know what I mean? And so it's always good to have people like that to train with. But my point being is that I think since I've started doing that, it's actually helped me have a different perspective on my hunting season.
Yeah.
I wasn't nearly as I don't want to say upset or disappointed or have as much anxiety, might be one way to say it, over not having the type of deer around me that I wanted to have.
Yeah.
I was just like, this is what the season is. I was like, and I just need to adapt and just accept what it is and just continue to work. And if it works and it happens, it'll happen. If not, then it won't, and it's not not for lack of trying. It's just, it's just not in the cards. And it's the first year that I'm actually excited for late season. you know, and I was like, maybe that's the silver lining for me. Maybe that's it. Maybe this was, you know, this had to happen because I needed to have growth and experience in another area. And now in which I'm usually not excited about late season. I'm actually excited about late season this year for the first time in I don't know how long.
Awesome. Yeah,
You
I
know,
love late season.
yeah, it's talking to Jake Bush got me a little fired up about it. You know, because he
Yep.
actually grew up in that, not in that general area, but you know, north, and he hunt where he grew up. He hunted very similar type of stuff, and so
Yep.
he and I kind of talked offline about it. And he was like, "Hey, look for this, look for this, look for this. This is how I would hunt it. This is how I have found success in late season up there." He's like, "And if you can find these things," he's like, "Man, it's I don't want to say fish in a barrel, but he's like, you know, they're gonna have very limited resources, and when you find the resource," he was like, "It's they're all gonna be there, you know,
Yeah.
at least in this area." But man, I want to get back to, you know, you mentioned thermal hub, and we've described these in the past, and I know you broke down like kind of like what you look at in terms of thermal hubs, but this particular thermal hub that you found, what was the setup for this one? Like how did that thermal hub come together? What was kind of dumping into that spot?
Well, this thermal hub, what it was a hollow that run. The mouth of it was to the east, and it run kind of northwest a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you got up into the head of that hollow, it actually split, and you had one fork went left and one fork went right, and
Mm-hmm.
so that created a point right in between. And then you also had little old finger ridges that come off, from the left and the right.
Mm.
So you had essentially, you know, let's see, one, two, you had multiple points right in there in that one spot,
Mm-hmm.
and that main point up in the middle was actually facing out of the hollow and was facing, kind of an easterly direction.
Okay.
So, any west northwest wind is going to be coming across the top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And but now this year we had more easterly winds than I can ever remember during season.
I would agree with that. Yeah, and the thing
Yeah,
was that was the other thing that was kicking me in the pants all season long was like most of the spots. So the acorns were bad, and so like a lot of the places I thought were going to be good, you know, just weren't panning out. And then most all the spots that I kind of find or that I kind of locate, I specifically find for like southwest winds, and
yeah,
a few for north northeast when that front rolls in that you know you want to, oh man, I want to be in this spot whenever I get a north or northeast. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But majority of my setups are southwest because that's like 80% of the wind, you know, prevailing wind that I'm going to get around here.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, which made for, you know, an even tougher season. So you know what's on the agenda for this year? Let's find some east wind, find some east wind setups.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, because at least then I can take advantage. Because I mean, let me ask you a question because I hear guys talk about this sometimes. Some guys absolutely love an east wind because it's so rare. And that it just messes the deer up in terms of like their bedding kind of patterns.
Yeah.
Do you ever play off of that? Is that something you pay
No,
attention to?
I
No.
don't. I don't pay attention to it. Uh, to be honest with you, whenever I walk into the woods, on my way in is when I'm deciding where I need to set up.
Really?
Yes. Now I say that I I'm going off of I'm just like everybody else. I watch the news, I see, or I look at my Spartan Forge app, and I see which direction the wind is being predicted to be blowing. But now I can tell you, and I know you know too, and every other hunter does too. Just because it says we're going to have a west wind, by the time you get into where you're going, it's not always true because
Mm-hmm.
depending on the contour of the land, the topography and stuff like that, it can change it a lot.
Yeah.
And so you don't always know where you're going to go up a tree until you actually start getting up into where you're wanting to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
One thing I've taken advantage of this year more than anything, started doing it the past 2 years. I know I should have been doing it long before this, but I'm not going to make any excuses. I've just been lazy about it. But the past 2 years, I've made more of an effort um, to do my journaling, right? And
yeah,
what really has helped me, just because you brought up Spartan Forge, was because when I can drop a pin of a journal pin in the app and I can log my information, it'll pull in like all my GPS information. So it'll give me the prevailing. So I can literally lay down in there. It's like when I drop my GPS pin, it'll say, hey, today it was overcast. Here's the precip, the humidity, like blah, 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 like every piece of
Yes.
detail. And then I write in there, northwest wind, right? Saw
Yep.
4 deer at 9 o'clock coming from the south, right?
Yep.
Et cetera, et cetera. And then I can go back and when I look at it, I can see that like, hey, the prevailing Spartan Forge based on the GPS and all the weather data said it was a west wind. But in
Yep.
that spot, it's actually a northwest wind when I get these conditions. Because I think some people forget that even if you go in and you wind map stuff, if you don't have the exact same conditions that you had when you wind mapped it, it may not be the same exact kind
That's
of
exactly
wind
right.
setup.
Yep.
And so that overcast, is it getting full sun? Is it not? Is it a little bit of precip or is it not? You know what I mean? All that information helps determine what that wind is there. And so that's the one thing I've really started using, the Spartan Forge app journaling feature for was to kind of is to actually just capture all that. So whenever I do make a play at a certain spot, if I have very similar weather conditions, I know exactly what I'm going to get when I get there.
Right. Yep.
So that's always kind of it takes all the guesswork. I'm telling you, man, I need to dummy proof things. Like the less thinking I have to do, the better off I am in that particular moment. But
Well, I think the more you do it, and the more experience that you get, that you do things out of, um, you don't even have to think about it. When
yeah.
you're going in, you just automatically start doing things. And I think it's one thing that beginning hunters or have a hard time. Well, not necessarily them, but the more veteran hunters, whenever they're asked a question, they forget about all that stuff because it's just second nature to them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's hard. I know from experience, it's hard for me to articulate what I see or what I think a lot of times because it just comes natural to me. It's just second nature. I just automatically do it.
Yeah. It's
And
I remember when I first got to the point to where I didn't any longer have to think about like what the thermals were going to do in a spot.
yes,
Because thermals used to screw me up so bad.
yeah,
And I remember whenever like that light bulb moment happened where I was like, I walked into a spot, I set up, and I didn't even think about it. I got in there, and once I got set up, I was like, oh man, what are the thermals doing? And I started dropping milkweed. They were doing exactly what I thought they would do.
yeah,
And it was just, and I was like, aha. That was like a moment where, and it was funny because like from that moment on, my encounters went way up because
yeah,
now I was able to like truly, cut the wind. I was now cornering the wind on pretty much every setup where I was giving the deer as much of the wind as I possibly could. And
yeah.
it was just from that repetitive experience. But man, so this buck, dude, that you ended up getting in Ohio, like I call him a trophy because I know exactly where you're at, and that place will break a man.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, people, when they think about Ohio, they think about high deer numbers and they think about giant whitetails. Now, this place does have some giant whitetails,
Mm-hmm.
but they're few and far between still,
Mm-hmm.
and deer numbers are low. That let's see, there was four of us on that trip, and, you know, we just wasn't seeing very many deer,
Yeah.
so
I remember my first time there hunting there. I did a 10-day hunt. Each day was a dark to dark hunt.
yep,
And in 10 days, I saw 3 deer,
yes,
and that's that place. It's like,
yep,
but the allure is that, the one that walks, one of those 3 could be a 180-inch giant that you might not ever see again in your life,
and that's exactly right. Yep,
and so you take the good with the bad. Like that place still haunts me to a degree because I haven't been back in probably two maybe 3 years. In the last hunt I did there, I hadn't seen a shooter buck on any of the hunts that had been there to that point. And there was one big deer that I was kind of after in this one particular area. And I think I busted him out of his bed, like on my way out, because I heard a buck grunting. I told this story before, but whenever I walked out, I thought that deer had left, but he happened to be bedded on top of this ridge as I was leaving. And I busted a lone deer out of there, and he was grunting at a doe in the morning from that particular spot. And I think it was that deer because it was the right time. Like he would always show up to this one scrape, 2 years in a row within like a 3-day window, and it was
Yeah.
within that 3-day window. And so I ended up going to another spot and hunting that, whenever after I left there, I went to another spot, and I had probably like 125-inch, 8-point walk up, broadside within, whatever it was, 25 yards or something like that. And I passed him, and I still kick myself for that.
Man, yeah.
Because that is a place that is hard to hunt, and any deer in that spot to me is kind of a trophy. Any shooter buck, like a 3-year-old deer or whatever, is a shooter buck in that spot because of just how low the deer numbers are and how hard that place is to hunt. And so that deer still to this day, I can still see the setup in my mind. I can I can replay the whole thing, and I had time with him too. I probably had him in the general area and general vicinity of me within like a 40-yard area of me for probably 15 minutes.
Oh.
Yeah. And just, I let him go. And
I
remember walking out of the woods that night going, well, the plan was I was going to come back.
Yeah.
And, over Thanksgiving, cause we'd go back home, which is kind of halfway there for us. We'd do Thanksgiving with my wife's family, and I'd drive there to hunt for a couple of days, but then her whole family got COVID and all that stuff. And so we ended up not going back, and I ended up not making it back. And so, I kicked myself for that. Cause that was a good buck. Cause I told Chad, it's like, once I kill a deer there, I was like, I'm never going back.
Yeah.
I was like, you'll never see me there again once I get one.
I've got a special love for the place. I've hunted that area 6 different seasons, and I've come home with 6 bucks.
I know. I can't believe that. Every time you kill one from there, I text Chad, and I'm like, Nathan did it again. Like, he's like,
but
I know. Go ahead.
I think that that type of place is really my wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And I come from an area that has low deer numbers. I'm used to hunting. It's just like this past week. I hunted in the mountains, and I have some good deer on camera.
Mm-hmm.
I hunted that place all last week, and I seen 11 deer, and only one was a small buck. So I'm used to those kind of conditions, and I think that helps me out too. So
right.
But
yeah, it's not your first rodeo in those types of conditions.
Right.
Yeah. There's been plenty of guys I know that have gone there, for their first time, and it was their only time, because they're just not. It's a hard place to hunt. It's not for it's not for the faint of heart. If you're a person who likes to see a lot of deer, it's probably going to be a miserable week for you.
Yeah.
But man, I want to go to your second buck, man. So you had the Homestead buck. Then after that,
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that deer.
Well, he's I only own 12 acres.
Mm-hmm.
I do live in farm country, but I am surrounded by large farms that. And one of the guys that owns the majority of the property around here, he's a wealthy guy. He lets nobody hunt but himself, and he's just a gun hunter. And most of his property is pretty open, so he just essentially rides a UTV around and shoots bucks from it.
Right.
So it is very, very hard for a deer to make it past 2.5 years old here. Well, this summer I had 2 bucks that was one of them, which I killed. I feel like he was a 3-year-old, but I also had another buck that was 4 or 5 here, and I posted pictures on my Instagram page there of him back, during the summer in velvet. But anyway, I most years I'll have me a little food plot here, and it's mostly for my wife if she wants to hunt or something other, and I will hunt a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But this buck, the one that I ended up killing, he was right at 21 inches inside, which is a good deer for here.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was hoping that my wife would kill him with a firearms, or I would get him with my bow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it didn't work out that way. I was taking her hunting that evening. We seen him. He was moving around chasing a couple of does right at dark, and she just didn't feel comfortable with the shot. And so I took advantage of the opportunity and killed him. And he was a really nice deer, but I was not satisfied with how I killed him. and I know that's probably not what you want to hear, but that's the truth. You know,
Right.
I was
Yep.
actually sick over the situation and kind of depressed for several days because I really wanted to kill him with my bow, and so that took that hunt away from me.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I ended up killing him, but you know, in this kind of country here, um, a buck of that caliber, if he's around and I have a firearms, if I can hunt him, he's a dead deer.
Right.
You know, it's just not a challenge at all.
Right.
So, and I just kind of felt bad over that situation, but it doesn't take anything away from the deer. You know, he's still a nice deer, and
Yeah, it's great,
yeah,
great buck. But I know you wanted to. I know you wanted to use your stick bow because that's your jam, man. That's
yeah,
your
yeah,
when I think of you, I think of stick bow. I haven't
yeah,
transitioned yet. It's been on my mind.
yeah.
You know,
Well, I can tell you, you can do it.
I
There's
know, I know.
no doubt in my mind that you cannot do it. The thing, you ever heard the sayings, "Start right, stay right"?
Yeah.
Well, that applies to traditional archery so much, you know, as much as anything out there. Because once you start down that path, if you don't start off right, you're going to create bad habits, and those bad habits are extremely hard to overcome.
Hmm.
So if you get hooked up with somebody that is successful and a good shot, and have them help you get started off right, and you'll stay right, and you will enjoy it, and
Hmm.
you'll be successful at it. So
Yeah, it's one of those things that's been on my mind. My buddy AJ, he owns this archery shop called Bob and AJ. It's the shop that I always go to. They're buddies of mine. And
yeah,
when I decide to make the jump, and I got my buddy Todd, which I think you might actually know Todd, or at least through Instagram, know Todd, from Jersey. He's a big traditional bow guy, and so he's
yes,
shared some information with me. Um, Jonathan Moreland, he and
yeah,
I talked about it.
he is a killer.
Dude, is he is for real. He is a killer.
Yeah,
I love that guy. Like I've only ever
he's
talked to him.
intense.
He is, man. I had him
Yeah,
on the podcast one time, and we'll text message every now and then. Like he and his buddy were coming back from Idaho from hunting elk, and I was out there. I think right before they were out there, and on their way back, they were swinging through Kansas to scout, and so he gave me a call to. He was just curious, what area I had been to in the past, and I shared some information with him or whatever. I don't know exactly where they ended up, but they killed two hammers. His buddy killed just
yeah,
a freaking slob, and
yeah,
he killed a really good deer. But my buddy AJ at Bob and AJ's, he used to shoot competitively, if I'm not mistaken, and was really good. And there's a couple guys at the shop that work for him that I believe still shoot competitively traditional archery.
yeah,
And they're good. Actually, my buddy Wilson, he used to try to outshoot them with his compound at distance. Like, so they would say, you shoot, whatever distance. I'm making this up because I don't remember exactly how far it was, but they'd
you're
be like,
right.
all right, Wilson, you shoot 60 yards with your compound, and I'll shoot 30 with my stick bow, and we'll
Yeah,
see who wins. And he would just get smoked by those guys with stick bows. Like, you know what I mean? Like they were slick. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But it's been on my mind, man, because everybody that I know who does it, they've all told me this, and I'm sure you'll probably corroborate their story, which is once you do it and you kill your first deer with that, they're like, you will never go back.
that's right. Yeah,
They said there's just something about like how my thing is the reason I would love to do it is because like if I could have, and some people might say that this is stupid because it's not like a big, like, killing an elk or a moose or whatever, but I would love to shoot a, uh, a reputable sample of the whitetail species in Kansas. So not a giant, but just a good buck
yeah,
from the ground with traditional equipment.
yeah,
Like I would love that. Like that to me would be just one of my, like, I don't know that it could get much better than that.
right.
So that's really the driving force for me wanting to eventually shoot a stick bow is because I
Well,
want.
you can do it. I promise you can.
All right. Well, when I make the transition, man, you're going to be getting a lot of phone calls and text messages
That's
from me. Just so you know. Well, buddy, we've been at it a little over an hour here, man. I want to be sensitive to your time. Let people know where they can find out more about you on Instagram and stuff like that, where they can follow along with you. And you also have that hunt from Ohio coming out on video. I think it drops today as we're recording this on the Stickbo channel or on
the Stick Boys.
Stick Boys channel. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually as we speak, it's already dropped this season. I think around 7:30. So
nice.
And of course on Instagram I'm Mountain Hunter. I'm easily to find there. So I don't have Facebook anymore.
Yeah, but, that's just a bad place to hang out anymore. I avoid it too.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, everyone, check out that video. I know that's what I'm going to do as soon as I jump off of here. Is going to watch that video. Well, at least once my Steelers start stinking. They're playing Monday night, so I might watch a little bit of that. And once they're stinking real bad, then I'm going to switch over and watch something that's going to be uplifting, which is Nathan Killen deer. Buddy, I appreciate you coming on, man. It's always a pleasure talking to you. If I don't talk to you beforehand, I'll send you some pictures actually of this deer that I'm trying to kill up north. But if I don't talk to you beforehand, Merry Christmas to you and yours. And I hope one of these days our schedules work out to where actually we're able to get together and scout or do something together. Because I'd really like to get together with you at some point.
Okay. Yep. Thanks for having me, buddy.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. If you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there as well. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tethered, Spartan Forge, Exodus, and Skull Brew Coffee Company. And until next time, we'll see y'all.